Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful July the 23rd, 2019. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, we're enjoying the hot days of summer. Training camp has kicked off in the NFL. Major League Baseball teams that were slumping are in the Major League pennant hunt right now. Just an exciting time for summer sports.
Well, it's always exciting, especially in summer. Everybody's getting ready. At least in California, a lot of people walk around with a lot of clothing that's conspicuously missing, Big C. So I think sometimes that, depending on how it looks, everybody's happy to get in shape out here. I know a lot of talk about baseball, especially on the West Coast. The Dodgers talking about doing some renovation to their stadium. There's a tragedy also on the road of boxing. We just talked about that last week. You know, it's hard to avoid. It's just a matter that's out there. I do want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. I just want to check on, I know I've been watching, being out here on the West Coast. You have, the weather is really tough on a lot of people. And then back east, I saw flooding in New Jersey. It doesn't flood New Jersey in summertime. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, not only New Jersey, you had New York, you had D.C., Charlton, you had tornadoes out in Nantucket. I mean, we've had a strange weather pattern all summer long. I mean, and so it's always, you have to be aware of your surroundings. Unfortunately, you know, it's going to cost a lot of people property damage, but hopefully no loss of life in these horrific situations.
Yeah, well, we just hope that everybody stays safe. And, of course, when you do need some help, you can call and get some help. There's an 800 number, and it's amazing how, since we've been doing this, Big C, at least I've noticed more reasons that people can call it. It's a national suicide hotline number, but it's not just for suicide. It's for anybody going through some type of issues. You can call this. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or a lot of teenagers are out of school. They don't like to call, but they can text. You can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and they can get some help. But I want to start today. It's kind of a downer of a story, but it's real life, so it's real talk. Russian boxer Maxim Dachiev dies, suffering brain injuries last week in a fight. It was Friday, and it was stopped in the 11th round in Maryland. And he was fighting Sergio Matis, who was dominating the whole fight, Big C. But we just talked about Wilder when he was saying he wanted to kill a man in the ring. Obviously, just tough talk. But we talked about Pacquiao's friend that died after suffering some brain damage in the ring. And we were talking about, should Pacquiao and Mayweather fight again? Now, this was a young man. And oftentimes we wonder about older fighters. I just want to get your thoughts on what it does to boxing, Big C.
Well, Charlton, this is something that's always been a sore eye in boxing, because over the decades, dozens of fighters have lost their lives after battles in the ring, Charlton. But I think you have to have more ring awareness, not from the fighter's perspective, Charlton, that you have all of these people around that are administering to the fighter, Charlton. You have the trainers in the corner. You have the referees, Charlton, that are in the ring. You have the judges. You have to look at a fighter. You also have ringside doctors.
Yeah.
You have to look at a fighter, Charlton, and see if he's struggling in any kind of way. It's not always about the knockdown. It's about the accumulation of punches. Is this fighter responding? Is he protecting himself? I mean, it's a sad day for the great sport of boxing, Charlton.
Yeah.
But we talk about the concussion scenario in football and the emphasis that they put on football and former players and even current players.
Yeah.
Boxers are concussed all the time. They're taking consistent blows to their head. Football players are protected by a helmet. Boxers are not. I know they've changed the size of gloves over the years. At one point, they used only 8-ounce gloves, and they went up to 12-ounce gloves, trying to add more padding. But it's imperative that the medical people and everyone else associated with that ring, Charlton, during the time of that way back down in totem pole, Charlton, for an opportunity to come back up and fight for a championship.
Yep.
You may have struggled 3-4 years to get a championship opportunity. This young man was undefeated going into this fight. He had beaten 2 former champions also, so he was maybe a year away if he had survived to get an opportunity at a world championship. Would have changed his life, would have made him an American citizen. He would have been able to bring his wife and child over to this country. He's a Russian native. But, fighters, they don't know how to give up.
Right.
Because they know if they give up, and we saw that years ago with Leonard Duran. No mas, no mas.
Right.
But in that situation, one fighter was already a world champion, so he was world renowned and had an opportunity to come back. When you're not a world champion and you lose one of these fights, Charlton, you don't have an opportunity to come back. There's going to be 5 or 6 guys that catapult above you that's going to get opportunities at a championship. So you might be 2 to 3 years down the road to even sniff at an opportunity for a championship. And so these type of tragedies have happened.
Yep.
It's unfortunate, Charlton, but the medical personnel and all the technical personnel around the ring have to be more attentive of the health and welfare of the fighter, not just the entertainment of the event.
It's interesting, as we just talked about the great Rocky fight with Apollo Creed and Ivan Drago, and then in the movie Creed, where Creed, the fight was stopped. It was Drago's son. Again, it's a boxing movie. But we just talked about this, Big C, on Friday. And to have this fight happen Friday, and then to have the news just today. But when you think about Roberto Duran, when you went back to that no mas fight, now I want to ask your thoughts as a fighter. Do you feel that no mas, when he quit, he knew that he didn't have what he needed? But as a fighter, a lot of guys will lose what's called that macho attitude they have to have. Does that still play? If a guy like Duran, who was a champion, can say no mas, what is it about these younger guys that won't do it? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the generation that we live in now is not a generation of pride. It's a generation of ego.
Yeah.
When you look at all professional athletes, it's about ego now that all professional athletes participate with, because they have this social media and everything is instantaneous.
Yep.
When that fight occurred, there was no ESPN when they had no mas, Charlton. It didn't exist. It wasn't a worldwide stage like it is now, where you have instantaneous response to an event. I go back to Ali Liston. When Liston went down against Ali, there was no 24-hour sports networks. You had to wait till the next day to get that on the news outlets, Charlton.
Yep.
It wasn't instantaneous that night. So as we looked at the growth of fighting over the decades and the growth of news outlets and sports outlets over the decades, it has forced fighters to say, hey, I can't be embarrassed. My ego won't allow me to be embarrassed, even when they get hurt.
Right.
And I know Mike Tyson's career, when he was hurting people, Charlton, fighters didn't say, well, let me get up and take more of this beating. They stayed down. Michael Spinks, perfect example.
Yeah.
Mike said, when he hits me, I ain't getting up.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not here to get hurt.
Yeah.
There's been many fighters, Charlton, because the check has gone through. When they went down, they said, hey, I'm good with that. I got paid to be here.
Yep.
Floyd Mayweather is a perfect example. He doesn't fight anybody. He runs.
Yeah. He runs to the bank.
A decathlete for 12 rounds. That's all he's doing is just running. You think he's running a marathon.
He's running to the bank.
Fighters have to understand, don't just get there and get pummeled. When you're struggling, go down. The worst thing for a fighter is his ego.
Yeah.
They won't go down even when they're hurt. Go down, take the standing 8 count.
Yep.
But they're constantly saying, I'm all right. Then the referee lets them go and they're wobbling all over the place.
Yeah.
Legs are like spaghetti. So, medical personnel and all technical personnel around fights have to be more attentive to the boxer's needs.
Yeah, they have to. And I know we talk about being tough in our society. Don't be tough, be smart. When you think about this, since 1884, so we're going back over 120 years, Big C, 125 years. Since 1884, approximately 500 boxers have either died in the ring or died as a result of being battered in the ring. And that's since the boxing rules, called the Queensberry Rules, were established back in 84. And that's for sportsmanship and fair play. Well, MMA would be outside of the Queensberry Rules. There really is no sportsmanship in MMA, even though MMA rule says that there are. But compared to boxing, no. I would have thought that MMA would have more fatalities than boxing. Does that surprise you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the thing about MMA is they haven't taught told you about the fatalities in the MMA. Boxers and fighters in the MMA suffer much more horrific head trauma, Charlton, what they do in the boxing ring, because when you look at what they have on their hands, you're allowed to kick an individual, you're allowed to elbow an individual, Charlton,
Yep.
you're allowed to choke them out. There has been death in the MMA ring, Charlton. It's just not notable like it is in boxing, because when boxing is on, it takes a grandiose stage
Yeah.
versus MMA where they're fighting every week and fighting in the garage half the time.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, boxing has always been considered a gentleman's sport. MMA is just a vicious gladiator sport.
Yeah.
There have been multiple deaths, coming from those MMA fights over the years, Charlton, since it's been in existing. It just hasn't been publicized like the boxing world has.
Well, we know that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and whenever you can have money being made, safety will acquiesce to money. It just will, and they'll come out and say our thoughts and prayers, and we're going to do more to make people get the proper training, but money will always rule out. Do you think this puts any damper on the talk of a Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao fight, or is it just happens, Big C? Your thoughts?
This just happens. This is part of the boxing lore that you deal with, Charlton. Tragedy will always strike in every sport.
Yeah.
I mean, athletes perish in every sport. They may not perish during the event, Charlton, but, when we think about Doc Holliday, who was just inducted into Baseball's Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And he crashed his private plane, Charlton, into the water down in the Florida Keys.
Yeah.
What drove him into that? No one knows what the cause of his death was. Was it, he was going through mental issues or whatever happened? Was it mechanical problems? Death occurs with all athletes at some point.
Yeah.
These things never put a tarnishment on anything that deals with money, Charlton. That's where sports is.
Oh, yeah. It's the king.
It's the next multi-million-dollar contract that's up. That's
Yeah.
all that matters.
Well, again, thoughts and prayers with the young man and anyone that gets in a boxing ring or an octagon. And just like you said, they're not going to advertise that someone had a fatality that was traced back to an MMA fight. They just don't. And I know it's a tougher sport than boxing, so I know it happens in both. Again, I just wish all the fighters the best, and hopefully that more officials can come in and referees can just come in and stop the fight and not let it go until we have a calamity. I want to take a look at jumping into some baseball talk, because obviously you talked about some Hall of Fame inductees, Big C, and I think what's happening right now for the LA Dodgers, they are doing something that probably could have been done a long time ago. LA Dodgers are going to renovate the stadium down at Chavez Ravine, and all they're going to do is make a few little adjustments, and they're going to add a Sandy Koufax statue, which I think is very classy. Oftentimes, some organizations may wait until a player's gone and they make a posthumous suggestion, but I'm so glad they have the class to do that. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is just part of sports. I mean, every arena now in professional sports is getting a statue dedication of some type.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it means much to the young people that attend the games now, Charlton. That's the baseball purists. It may, move them emotionally a little bit, but, renovation, I mean, the Dodgers are not going to build a new stadium down in Los Angeles because of the price of it. But
Yeah.
Chavez Ravine and Dodger Stadium, when it was built, it was a state-of-the-art stadium in baseball, and it's been around since the early 60s. So it's not a new facility, but they've constantly upgraded its facilities over the years. The statues outside the stadium, whether it's basketball, football, or even baseball now, Charlton, has become a mainstay of Americana sports.
Yeah, and it still is a great stadium. I remember there was a time at the LA Coliseum, they were actually playing baseball where the Rams are playing right now for another season before they open up the new $2 billion stadium down in Inglewood. But for baseball, congratulations for the Dodgers. I think that's a classy move. I want to go up I-5 and stay on the West Coast. The San Francisco Giants, they are 9. They've won 9 of the last 10, and in 10 games, they are a Major League best 15-3 the month of July. This is a team with Bochy being on his last hurrah and talking about shipping off Madison Bumgarner. Now, just hold still, because they played better baseball than anyone in the month of July. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they've been a hot team, Charlton, in July. There was a lot of talk that Madison Bumgarner would not make it through the month as a San Francisco Giant, Charlton. In his last 5 starts, he's had a 1.55 ERA. ERA. He's been a dominant pitcher that he was in the past. And he's thrown off the talk about the trade. He dropped the F-bomb on it, said, whatever happens, happens.
Right.
I'm here to play.
Right.
But that's what professional athletes have to do, is go out and play.
Yeah.
The Giants are now in the thick of the pennant race in the National League West. So, why jump ship in dumping off all these players? Baumgartner threw out there to say, hey, I'll only go to 5 different teams if you're looking to trade me, because he has a trade clause in his contract. Most big money players will do that. But the Giants have to look at it from this aspect, is that you got a team that's now gotten hot in the month of July.
Yes.
You got fans that you want to keep with the ball club, Charlton. You can't dump everybody in these fire sales that everybody's talking about to help somebody else win the pennant.
Right.
You think about it, the Giants won 3 World Series over a 6-year span.
Yeah.
During that time in those World Series, Baumgartner was 8-2 in those runs. So he was a dominant player that they needed on that pitching staff.
Yeah.
So if they can, by some means, make the wild card run with him on the staff, Bruce Bochy knows how to manage in September and October. The Giants have as good a chance as anybody in the National League.
If the Giants get into the playoffs, even as a wild card, maybe Bruce Bochy doesn't retire, Big C. The money still cashes, the check still clears, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as a manager, and you spent over 30 years in doing a particular thing,
Yeah.
you want to get out. You want to go out and have some fun. You think about Bruce Bochy having a swan song. What a better way to go out if he does get into the playoffs, Charlton, and have an opportunity to coach in the World Series one more time and leave on top of the game. You can't script a better exit than that.
Well, I look forward to seeing baseball. It always gets great after the All-Star game because it gets more real. And when it's real, players tend to play harder. Oftentimes, when you're saying that someone's going to be traded, that can make them play harder too, Big C. When we look at the batting average in the National League, you look at Jeff McNeil for the New York Mets. He's batting .339. Christian Yelich, who's most likely going to be one of the top 2 or 3 guys for the MVP voting, and he's batting .337. The guy I like is Cody Bellinger, who's really on minimum wage when you think about how people are being paid now. Bellinger for the Dodgers bats .332. You have Ketel Marte for Arizona batting .322, and then Charlie Blackmon for Colorado's batting .319. What I noticed conspicuously absent is your friend that makes $330 million for the Philadelphia Phillies. He's not in that league, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you look at Bryce Harper, you look at Nolan Arenado, you look at Manny Machado. Those 3 players signed the largest contracts during the offseason in the National League. So I guess in Major League Baseball, you get what you pay for. Christian Yelich was last year's MVP, and he's right there in the hunt to duplicate that feat again in 2019.
Yeah.
But what this shows, Charlton, is that by paying a baseball player an exorbitant amount of money doesn't mean the ROI, that you're going to get a return on your investment. Big money contracts are about marketing.
Yeah.
So who can we get to come to the ballpark to view these players? Because we're using these marquee names to attract the fan.
Yeah.
These marquee names are not delivering on the mound, though, Charlton.
No, they're not delivering on the mound, and it's just a matter of watching what happens as people start making more money. More money doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to play better baseball. It never has, and it never will be. It's just a matter of who gets hot at the right time, and I think you have a lot of players who are speaking with their bats and not their paychecks. When you look over at the American League, you look at DJ LeMahieu for the New York Yankees batting .338. There's Michael Brantley for Houston. He bats .328. Rafael Devers for Boston's batting .321. And then you look at Xander Bogaerts. He's batting .313. You look at the number 5 guy is Whit Merrifield for Kansas City. He's only batting .309. I won't say only, because anyone batting over 300, you really know how to hit the ball, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you think about those guys in the American League, nobody's making maximum money. That's the thing about it. When you look at the player for the Yankees, he's a rookie in leading the American League in hitting. The Yankees are one of the hottest home run hitting teams in the American League. They set the major league record with 31 consecutive games hitting home runs. The Yankees are delivering, and when you can deliver on that grandest of all stages, Yankee Stadium, that means that you have baseball moxie.
Yeah.
And what I like about when you talk about the batting averages in the American and the National League, Charlton, these are the new faces of Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
These are young guns that are coming up and delivering. They're not making the contracts as some of those veteran players that are not delivering, but it lets you know that baseball is going to be healthy for the next decade.
Do you like the fact that there are a number of guys in baseball, and I'm sure money, Curt Flood, money talks, but there are so many players that are making in the top 10 of income earners in baseball, and they're not leading the league in batting averages. And I think at some point in time, I know you're not a guy that's big on, when people put their stats and talk about stats, you just want to see kind of guy play. But at some point in time, will the owners start looking at the results outside of what they want the results to be and pay players on that scale? Because if that's the case, the guys who've landed those $300 and $400 million contracts, they wouldn't be the top 3 players in the league. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the reason why that will never occur, Charlton, is called union.
Yeah.
Baseball has the greatest union in all of professional sports. They have negotiated that players can make this money because there's a thing called revenue sharing.
Revenue sharing.
The owners have to spend the money.
Yeah.
They can't just hold it and say, well, we're going to keep it in our pocket and not dole it out to the players. All professional leagues have gotten to that point, Charlton, where they become business savvy.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do. You have to take power away from the owners. And this is the reason why you have your collective bargaining agreements. Baseball has been ahead of the curve for decades via Curt Flood when he started that with the free agency. But now that baseball players have more power than the owners have to dole out the cash.
Well, we know that it's always, at some point in time, players will get paid based on their productivity. And if not, then it's just going to break the league. You can't have the best performing athletes being the bottom of the pay poll. That in any industry. And I know the unions are what they are, but they'll find a way to renegotiate somehow. They just have to.
Well, but that's what the NFL does. I mean, if you look at the NFL, you take a first-round pick in the NFL, regardless of how good they are. Let's take Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas for a perfect example.
Yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott is talking about holding out after the 3rd year of his rookie contract.
Yeah.
Which he signed, he was happy having it because it paid him the pay scale of the time. Now he's in his 4th year and said, I'm not coming to training camp. Ezekiel Elliott has no power. He honestly has no power to hold out in the NFL.
Yeah.
He has to play under that contract if that's what the Dallas Cowboys want him to do. Then they have a 5th-year option because they signed him to a 4-year contract. And when you're a first-round draft pick, a team can add a 5th-year option.
Yeah.
They can pay him that 5th-year option. They don't have to negotiate with him. And this is the thing that they talk about. When you look at the draft, always talking about running backs are dispensable.
Yeah.
We saw that with Le'Veon Bell. The Steelers said, we're just going to franchise him. We're going to run him in the ground and we're going to franchise him. After the 5 years of that rookie contract, you know what Dallas can do? They can franchise.
Yeah, they can.
They can franchise the running back.
Yeah.
And all it is, now he's stuck for another year. And if he doesn't like it, but that contract will pay him in the top 3 of the running back. So Elliott is stuck there for 6 years at Dallas.
Yeah.
If he has another good year, what's Dallas do again? They franchise him once more.
Yeah.
What hurt the running backs in the NFL now is what the Rams did with Todd Gurley. They gave him guaranteed $47 million.
Yep.
What did Todd Gurley do? He went out and got hurt.
Yeah.
At that point, the NFL said, we're not going to pay another running back. That's the reason why Le'Veon Bell could not get a contract. When they saw that Todd Gurley got hurt and he was considered the top running back in the NFL,
Yeah.
the Dallas Cowboys are going to find that same mantra to do with Ezekiel Elliott. They've already done it with DeMarco Murray.
Yeah.
They're going to say, hey, we will pay a quarterback because he's not taking the beatings. But if you're a running back and you're touching the ball 400 times a season, how much wear and tear do you have? You don't have a lot. So they will pay you what they can on a rookie contract for the first 5 years. They don't mind paying you a franchise tag for the next 2. If they get 7, 8 years out of you,
Yep.
you're gone anyway as a running back in the NFL. You look around at the running backs in the NFL, who has been productive in the last decade past that 8th year?
Let me get your thoughts on how you talk about Ezekiel Elliott. I remember there were times with Marcus Allen, I think one of the best all-around running backs ever in the game. I know people think about Jim Brown, think about Earl Campbell, Franco Harris, but all of those players, if Marcus Allen was the one that could catch it and run it with the same success. Also, when I look at who the 49ers had they've had players that could do the same thing. Rathman in the backfield was a guy that could run as a fullback and catch it. And I think guys like Franco Harris, guys like a Earl Campbell, even Walter Payton, could you imagine if they played in this era? Because they're probably better than any running back we see to this day, especially Marcus Allen. I know people might say, well, no, it's Bo Jackson or Eric Dickerson, but no one could catch like Marcus Allen. Marcus Allen played quarterback in high school down at, I think it was Lincoln High School in San Diego, so he was a threat throwing the ball. So anytime you had Marcus Allen, and why I still think he's the NFL's best running back, he could throw it, he could run it, and he could also, he could receive. He was a three-headed monster, and if you look at how little money he was paid compared to these guys that hold out, I want to get your thoughts on how they measure up to those great players that I talked about. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at those players, Jonathan, those players weren't given the load like running backs now. And those running backs of that era didn't face the size of defensive players that the players face now.
Yeah.
You think about if you're facing all of your defensive linemen and they're weighing 300-plus pounds. Jim Brown didn't play against defensive linemen that were that big. He did not. He didn't play against 250, 260-pound linebackers.
Yeah.
So the wear and tear on the body was a lot less. Earl Campbell, they ran Earl Campbell into the ground. They got 8 years out of Earl Campbell.
Yeah.
Earl Campbell has had knee replacements. He's had hip replacements. He was even talking about doing suicide. He was wanting to commit suicide.
Yeah, that's a
because
shame.
his body was in so much pain.
Yeah.
But when you look at those old running backs, Charlton, Jim Brown has had all these joints replaced. He walks around with a cane and a walker half the time.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the wear and tear of those backs, Marcus Allen, what made him have longevity was Al Davis.
Yeah.
His fight with Al Davis extended his NFL career, Charlton, actually another 3 years.
Yeah.
He got 3 years of free payment because of his spat with Al Davis. Al Davis sit Marcus Allen down.
Yeah.
If he did not sit Marcus Allen down and run him into the ground, think about it. His career wouldn't have been what it was when he went to Kansas City. He wouldn't have had anything left in the tank.
Yeah.
Perfect example. Look at O.J. Simpson when he went to San Francisco. He had nothing left in the tank because the Buffalo Bills had ran him into the ground.
Yeah.
All of these running backs over time, they're great during their era. Eric Dickerson had more yards in the first 4 years in the NFL than any running back in history, just under 8,000. His career ended with just under 12,000.
Yeah.
So he got run into the ground. He never could find another system that worked like he had with the Rams the rest of his football life. He was with the Colts, the Raiders, and the Falcons.
Yep.
But he could never get back to that lure. Look at Adrian Peterson. The guy's had a 2,000-yard season. But last year he gained 1,000 yards with the Washington Redskins, but he didn't average 4 yards a carry. So think about how many times he had to touch the ball to struggle to get 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
These backs are expendable. So we can look at eras, but you got to look at the physicality of the era that these running backs played in. Could they come up and play against 300-pound linemen and 250-pound linebackers?
Let me get your thoughts when you mention those players and the longevity. I look at a guy like Emmitt Smith, and maybe should have retired a Cowboy, but he played in Phoenix. He finished playing for Arizona because they kept paying him, and who's going to turn out that kind of money? But he is not the fastest running back. He's not the shiftiest running back. He was not a guy that you could run out of the backfield like Marcus Allen and catch a 10 or 15-yard swing pass and take it to the house. But he had maybe the best offensive line, and that's why Emmitt had the yards. But I want to bring that back to Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott doesn't have the kind of offensive line that Emmitt ran behind. But Emmitt lasted multiple seasons, over 10 years. I know he played about 15 years, I believe. And I don't see Elliott having that same type of success because they don't have the same type of line. Would that make any sense? Or would you say Elliott's just as good? Individually, he's better than Emmitt Smith, but he doesn't have the same weapons that Emmitt played with. Your thoughts?
Well, he has a dominant offensive line. If you look at the first 3 years of his career, his first 3 years are more productive as an individual than what Emmitt Smith was. Emmitt Smith had a nasty offensive line. Those guys were criminals playing football.
Yeah.
They honestly were. They were criminals. They used to go out and do assault and battery on defensive players for 60 minutes every damn week that they played.
Right.
So, I mean, when you're running behind guys like that, it makes it easy on anybody. And that offense was set up for Emmitt Smith's mode of running.
Yeah.
That's what it was. All offenses are not set up and built around running backs, but Jimmy Johnson built that offense around Emmitt
Yeah.
So Emmitt Smith had the luxury of that. But when you look at offensive lines, I mean, Barry Sanders never had a great offensive line in Detroit.
Yeah.
But Barry Sanders, if you look at him, if he'd have played that length of time, if you do the per game average of what they had, Barry Sanders the greatest running back ever played. He didn't have any all-pro offensive linemen. He didn't have any criminals blocking for him. But he had that in Dallas for Emmitt Smith.
Yeah. Let me get your thoughts before we go to the Big C pause on two running backs. Number one, Herschel Walker. Many people thought that he was the best running back, or could have been the best running back, maybe next to Jim Brown. I think it hurt him by going to play in the USFL with the New Jersey Generals. And then there's also Bo Jackson, who may have been the best running back athlete of them all, playing baseball and football at the pro level. But I know Herschel was banged up because he was running too much, and playing for the New Jersey Generals didn't help any. But also Bo Jackson, because of what happened when he tore his muscle playing against Cincinnati down at the Coliseum in Los Angeles. Had those two guys stayed healthy, do you think that they would have approached what Emmitt Smith was able to do as a guy that maybe is about 30 pounds lighter than both of them, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Herschel Walker was probably the greatest college running back of all time.
Yeah.
He only played 3 years at the University of Georgia, and he amassed close to the 5,800 yards, I believe, in just 3 short seasons.
Yeah.
People don't look at Herschel Walker's numbers as a professional and really realize what he did. If you look at what he did in the NFL, Herschel Walker rushed for over 10,000 yards as an NFL running back with 3 different teams, Minnesota, Philadelphia, and Dallas. But then if you toss in what he did in the USFL, where he rushed for over 4,000 yards in 2 brief seasons in that league, he's one of the most dominant running backs ever to play professional football, regardless of putting a league together. Those guys that were playing in the USFL, about a third of them played in the NFL.
Yeah.
They transited right into the NFL. So I put Herschel Walker's overall professional numbers, Charlton, up against anybody. Emmitt Smith had the luxury of where he played to amass the yards, as well as the length of time that he played.
Yeah.
Barry Sanders gave up the game early. Otherwise, he would have rushed for 20,000 yards as an NFL running back.
Yeah, he definitely would have had the leading record of that, but he was tired of being beaten up, and maybe he was the smartest one because he can still get around better than a lot of those players can. I want to do what we call the Big C pause coming up. We're going to take a Big C pause, and we'll come back in a moment, and we hope that you'll join us. And we're going to talk more about some NFL and also college football. We'll be right back in just a moment. All right, we are back on Big C Sports, what we call the Big C pause. And what I love about Big C Sports is you can follow Big C Sports on the #1 podcast network in the United States of America, and that's iHeartRadio Podcast. You can also follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. And if you have a television set, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast. What I really like is the app called Alexa. When you go home or even on your computer, you can say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C, and he'll do his thing. And so I really thank our sponsors for all their support, and I just really appreciate where things are going. I want to touch on some NFL talk, and I know you love talking about that. I want to look at Big C's look at the top-ranked NFL quarterbacks going into 2019. And again, everybody has their own opinion. No one can say without a doubt who is going to be what. That's usually done at the end of the season. But if I give you, say, I'm going to bring up some names, and you can tell me what you think. I think most people would say Tom Brady would be the #1 guy because he has 6 Super Bowl championships. You can't really doubt Tom Brady. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's the consummate winner in the NFL. He doesn't make excuses year after year. His team does not struggle year after year. As long as Tom Brady is there, the New England Patriots will constantly win the AFC Eastern Division, Charlton, and have a pretty good damn chance of winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, he's won 6 of them, and he's been there 9 times. So my odds are on Tom Brady being the best and most reliable quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, and he's going to get that because they win with that system. And people say, well, it's because of Belichick. Well, I think he was successful at Michigan without Belichick. Belichick was not successful until he got Tom Brady. Drew Brees, I would say he would be the #2 guy. I want to get your thoughts if you think Drew Brees is ranked high enough, Vic. So your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't push Tom Brady off the pedestal just because of his body of work. But when you look at what Drew Brees does, I mean, he's completing over 70% of his passes as an NFL quarterback. I mean, those are pinball numbers that he is putting up. And
Yep.
he's playing in a perfect condition down in the dome. He's always had receivers that could acclimate to him, Charlton. Drew Brees is the next step right behind Tom Brady.
Would you think? And I like Drew Brees. Obviously, he played the way the game should be played. He's not the size of your prototypical NFL quarterback, but there are a lot of guys that are about his height that have won championships too, Big C. Patrick Mahomes. The book on Patrick Mahomes has yet to be written. When you look at how he took control of that Kansas City offense, and some of his players were in trouble throughout the year, but he still held everything together. I thought they outplayed New England in the AFC Championship game, but you know how sometimes a penalty is called against someone, the phantom call that sends New England back. That could have been Patrick Mahomes winning the Super Bowl last year over the Rams. I want to get your thoughts on this. Is he ranked too high, Big C, because he's so young?
No, he's right there where he should be. Patrick Mahomes can become the face of the NFL, the new face of the NFL. And when you look at those pinball numbers that he put up last year, I mean, he was the most exciting thing that has happened to the NFL in a long time. And we're hoping that he's not just a flash in the pan.
Yep.
But when you put up pinball numbers like he does, 50 touchdown passes in your first season as a starter, NFL MVP, if not for Tom Brady and Drew Brees, Charlton, I would have had him ranked #1 quarterback in the NFL.
And don't forget a couple of officials that called some phantom calls against Tom Brady that also went against Patrick Mahomes. Here's a guy that another guy that I think, and again, I'm kind of hesitant to say it, but you got to look at his Super Bowl. He has them. And Big Ben Roethlisberger, a guy that kept talking about walking away. Now, I know we talked about fighters. They get punch drunk, and they have a lot of pain. A lot of athletes have a lot of pain. They just are told to fight through it. So maybe that's what Big Ben was experiencing also. But is he, because he wants to quit so many times, I still want to put him at #4. I want to get your thoughts if you agree with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, he has a coach that keeps him in line, Charlton, and Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. Ben Roethlisberger led the league last year in passing yardage, so his productivity has not fallen off. I mean, he throws too many interceptions to be such a seasoned veteran. But now, you know, without the distractions that he had last year with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown,
Yep.
this has truly been Roethlisberger having to step up and be the bona fide leader of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's all on his shoulder whether he's going to maintain being one of those top echelon quarterbacks in the NFL.
Well, I think he can, and we'll see what he does without Antonio Brown there being someone that had sure hands and tried to maybe steal some of the limelight, and that didn't go too well for those players. Andrew Luck, I'm going to put him at #5. I know this is a guy that's had some severe health injuries, and many people thought that he could have been done because I think he had a laceration in his kidney, I believe. I know he had a lot of injuries and was banged up quite a bit in his early career, but now he's come back. And last year's playoff performance, I think people saw what he gave you at Stanford, a guy that could lead a team downfield. He's not a fast guy, but he's also able to get away from the rush. I want to get your thoughts if Andrew Luck is placed a little bit too high at this part of his career, Big. So your thoughts.
Well, no, I mean, you know, Andrew Luck last year was like the Energizer Bunny. He took a licking and kept on ticking.
Yep.
He came back from that shoulder reconstruction surgery, as you talked about. He also had the lacerated kidney, Charlton. They built an offensive line for him to protect him. He had a sluggish start at the beginning of the season, but once he caught his stride, I mean, he propelled the Colts into the playoff by himself. They ran up against a juggernaut in Kansas City. But when you look at Andrew Luck's numbers, his young team is growing along with him, Charlton. He's going to surprise a lot of people in his upcoming season. And you know, when you junk in these quarterbacks in position, Charlton, there's only so many that you can put in the top echelon.
Yeah, there's only so many. And I know as it gets closer to the top, a lot of people think, well, why is that guy there? And here's one. Hasn't won a championship, but he got there as a young player, and that's Jared Goff. And I know coming out of Cal, there are many people said, oh, he's too skinny, he's not going to make it. But when you have what the Rams had last year in the defense, he did his part, but I think he was exposed in the Super Bowl, Big C. I want to get your thoughts if he's too soon to be in this list.
Well, no, he didn't get exposed in the Super Bowl. That was just a Bill Belichick masterful defensive job.
Yeah.
I mean, Wade Phillips and Bill Belichick played chess in the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah.
You can say the same thing about Tom Brady that he got had, but when you look at the maturation of Jared Goff and what he has done with this Rams offense, being as high scoring as they were, leading the NFC in scoring last year, Charlton, they just have nothing but room to get to. And you got to realize he lost his top receiver during the season, Cooper Kupp. He's going to be back.
Yeah.
We saw Todd Gurley fall by the wayside late in the season. He's going to be back. So I expect bigger and better things from Jared Goff with the season that he had last year, the maturation that he's gone through.
Yep.
I expect for him to have even better numbers than what he had last season.
Here's a quarterback that at sometimes you wonder, will he ever get to the big game? And it's Phillip Rivers. I know he and Drew Brees have a lot in common as far as crisscrossing each other in the league. But I look at Phillip Rivers, and last year people thought this was his best performance. And they went into New England, and they got had again, just like a lot of teams do when they go there in the playoffs. Is he good enough to be at 7, or would you say that's too high for Phillip Rivers? Your thoughts?
Well, no, that's just about right for Phillip Rivers. Yes, he went into New England. This is the second time he's gone into New England in an AFC Championship game and lost, Johnson. You also got to look at the inclement weather. When New England gets teams in the playoffs at home in December, it's cold. In January, it's cold. And so you're coming from the left coast in California where you're used to sunshine and beaches all the time.
All the time.
You got milkshakes and ice all over the place.
And butter.
It's going to be tough for you.
Yeah.
But I look at the year that Phillip Rivers had last year. It was phenomenal, and he was in that same draft class with Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger. He's the only one of the three that has not made it to the Super Bowl. But his numbers were career numbers last year. I think they need to keep Gordon in-house. They need to find a way to get him happy so that he can help Phillip Rivers here in the latter part of his career.
Here's a player that I'm going to bring up that I think some people would always put in the top 2 or 3, but I just haven't seen it. So I think he's going to be a little bit lower if you look at performance, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Here's a guy that almost single-handedly destroyed his team because everything that was wrong was somebody else's fault. Everything that was right, it was Aaron's credit. I want to get your thoughts if being ranked number 8 is anathema for NFL quarterbacks because mainstream loves this guy. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to even look at him in the top 10 based on the last 5 years of his career. He really has not done enough to stay there. I know everybody says he's the quarterback you want with 2 minutes left on the clock. No, I want those quarterbacks
that are ahead.
8 minutes on the clock.
Yeah.
I want those guys who's got me the lead at that point because that means that they've always outplayed the guy that you want to have the ball with the last 2 minutes on the clock. Aaron Rodgers hasn't done anything the past couple of years to ignite a fire with anybody. And until he can get the Packers back to the Holy Land, Charlton, I mean, he's just a middle-of-the-road NFL quarterback. And now with LaFleur, the new head coach that they have there, Charlton, I think that the Packers will struggle because there's going to be a mental challenge between those two, the coach and the quarterback.
Well, another player that I think is just ready to just explode onto the league, and he was doing it before he had the knee injury, and that's Deshaun Watson. I still put him at number 9 because he has to win more. But I think as far as an athletic quarterback who's very smart, can run the ball out of the rush, he was very accurate downfield, makes good decisions. But the injuries, I don't want it to catch up to him if you're going to be so mobile. But I think Deshaun Watson's deserving of number 9 spot. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's matured a lot in the NFL. Houston has to do more with the offensive line about protecting him, find a way to get more quick passes out of his hand. I mean, he's held the ball too long and take too many hits in his first couple of years in the NFL. But, O'Brien has to make those adjustments as a head coach. He has Hopkins, one of the greatest receivers in the NFL today that just goes under the radar, but he has big numbers year after year. I think there's Deshaun Watson's time to shine now. He and Andrew Luck are in the same division, so this is going to be a battle between those for supremacy in that AFC Division South.
Well, I look forward to him having a stellar career and a breakout year again this year. I want to bring up a guy named Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is a guy that the league, for some reason, everyone's saying he's overrated, but he's the second winningest quarterback in the NFL in the last 3 years in the regular season. And I know Jerry Jones doesn't want to pay him. He just doesn't want to do what he did to Romo or Aikman and make those guys. He's a marquee player. He should be the Cowboys' prodigal son. And I don't know if Jerry wants that, but I want to get your feeling. Does he make a top 10 for you, Big C?
Yeah, his productivity alone in the first 3 years in the league, he's won the division twice. That means something and speaks for itself. I mean, you're with America's franchise, the Dallas Cowboys, and you're the face of that franchise. Jerry's going to have to dole up some dollars to get Zach under contract. But when I look at the productivity of him, he's gotten better. Even last year when they picked up Amari Cooper, it showed that he needed a skilled receiver, Charlton, to show his skill set. And that's Amari Cooper came around. They're going to need Ezekiel Elliott on the roster, Charlton. He can't hold out because he predicates a lot of success that Zach has.
A guy that I'm embarrassed that I would put so low is Russell Wilson. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, should be 2-0 in those Super Bowls. And we know what happened down in Arizona with the audible against New England. But we also saw where they have the blowout win over Denver in the Meadowlands. But here's a guy that has been the most productive running back and quarterback for the Seahawks. And I think I would really like to put him in the top 5. But I just want to see how he responds this year, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is the biggest challenge of his career this year, Charlton. They have a retooled offense. They've gotten rid of a lot of the veterans. The offensive line has to step up. Russell Wilson got the contract money that he demanded to get from Seattle. So all the onus is on Russell Wilson. We know he's been to back-to-back Super Bowls. He got his team back to the playoffs last year when everybody counted them out. Midway through the season, they said the season was over. Russell Wilson pulled the intangible saying, hey, I can will this team to victory, and he delivered with this team. So Russell Wilson, it's hard to put everybody in the top 10.
That's right.
But Russell Wilson has proven that he's a bona fide NFL superstar.
Well, definitely. And then another player that received $155 million from Art Blank, owner of Home Depot and the Atlanta Falcons, I believe also FC Atlanta. But Matt Ryan had the Super Bowl in his hands. They were up 28-3. How do you lose a 28-3 lead and then come back and get $155 million? So I know Matt Ryan is highly praised out of Boston College. I still think he deserves to be on the list, but I'm wondering if he should be in the top 15, but I will still put him at 12. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when I look at Matt Ryan's production, he's had it. The biggest problem down in Atlanta is that they can't play defense.
Yeah.
But when you look at his numbers, he's consistently, Charlton, even last year, he had better numbers than what he had as an NFL MVP at quarterback. So Matt Ryan has delivered under pressure down in Atlanta. He has a great receiver in Julio Jones. He has Mohamed Sanu and Calvin Ridley, who had an outstanding rookie season. He's going to get his running back, Devontae Freeman, back this year. Hopefully his offensive line can stand up, and we can see big things from the Atlanta Falcons trying to challenge the New Orleans Saints in that division.
Well, that should be exciting football this year. I want to jump in the last quarter of the show, Big C. Going into his 100th season, the NFL is amazing. The Chicago Bears have the most NFL Hall of Fame players with 33. The Green Bay Packers are the biggest rival. They're tied for 4th with 30 players. And they'll open the 100th NFL season versus each other at Soldier Field. I thought it should have been Lambeau Field, but you can't have everything because they do make cheese there, and I think butter and cheese have a lot to go in common. I know that's one of your favorites, I guess, add-ons to your salad, Big C. Butter on your salad, Big C.
Well, you're looking at the hot dogs that they have in Chicago and the deep pizza, so it was a challenge between the two. But when you think about the Chicago Bears and their rich history in the NFL and the NFL kicking off its 100th season, think about any corporation that's been around that long, and we think about the growth of the NFL, where it came from in its embryonic stage, Charlton, getting to where it is now, where it has taken Sunday away from God. It has become that big.
Yep.
The NFL is what America is, Charlton. It lives through the NFL and professional football.
Yeah, and we know it's always something that people look forward to, even with baseball. As great as baseball is right now, people are still focused on NFL. But I want to just get your thoughts in our final segment today. I want to go back to the college level because all these players want to go on to the NFL, and sometimes they can't. But and you may not agree with me, but I think the 12 greatest running backs in college football history, in the history of the college football universe. Number 1, Ron Dayne out of Wisconsin. He had 6,397 yards. Give me your thoughts on the great Ron Dayne, Big C. Your thoughts.
Well, running the ball up there in the Big Ten is Wisconsin has always been known for having some tremendous running backs over the years. Barry Alvarez, he built that program on running the football, and Ron Dayne not only set the NCAA's all-time rushing record, but he also went on to win the Heisman Trophy and play for a brief career with the New York Giants and Denver Broncos.
Yeah, number 2, I'm going to give you out of Texas, Ricky Williams. He rushed for 6,279 yards, and we know what he likes to do to relax. I wonder if he was relaxed before he rushed for this 6,279 yards, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, a common thing with those running backs, another Heisman Trophy winner. Mike Ditka traded away a franchise to draft Ricky Williams with the New Orleans Saints. But Ricky, liked to deal with the sticky icky a little bit too much. He got suspended a few times from the NFL before he took his career down with the Dolphins.
Yeah, he's a California kid, played, I think, at Patrick Henry High School down in San Diego. Marcus Allen played down in that same section. I want to give the number 3 guy, I want to stay in the state of Texas. I look at Tony Dorsett, but he played at Pittsburgh. 6,082 yards, and you knew he was going to get the ball, but I think he was amazing. Big C, your thoughts?
Another Heisman Trophy winner. You think about Tony Dorsett, Charlton. He was the first 6,000-yard rusher in college football history, a diminutive running back who was a star at Pittsburgh, went on to star with the Dallas Cowboys, won a couple Super Bowl rings down there, Charlton.
Yep.
Ended his career with the Denver Broncos before making it to the NFL Hall of Fame.
I'm going to give you a guy that maybe people don't believe in, DeAngelo Williams out of Memphis. I would pick him at number 4. He had 6,026 yards. Because he played at Memphis as opposed to playing at Tennessee, I think he maybe went under most people's radars. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's what happens, Charlton, when you don't play in one of those Power 5 conferences. But DeAngelo Williams was a deliverer on the football field. He was a nightmare for defenses for 3 years while he was at Memphis and amassed over 6,000 yards rushing.
When I give you my number 5 guy, it might be anathema to some of the people that thought that O.J. Simpson was the greatest running back to ever come out of USC. But I like a guy by the name of Charles White who used to block for Marcus Allen in the Rose Bowl. 5,598 yards. Had you not had this guy blocking for Marcus Allen, he could have eclipsed 7,000 yards. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about the USC running back and the stable of backs that they've had over time. John Robinson, believed in running the football. Student body right, student body left.
Yep.
Charles White, another Heisman Trophy winner, first-round draft pick of the Cleveland Browns. Didn't have a great career, but he joined forces with John Robinson once again with the Rams when they got rid of Eric Dickerson and amassed a couple of back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in the NFL.
Are you hurt that I don't have O.J. better than Charles White? Big C, your thoughts?
O.J. was a tremendous back when he was at USC. He only put in 2 years of college football. Actually, O.J. Simpson should have been the first back-to-back Heisman Trophy winner in college football, but because he had came from junior college in San Francisco, they gave it to Gary Beekman up at the University of Oregon.
Yeah, I thought that was anathema to college football. I want to say number 6 is Travis Prentice out of Miami of Ohio. 5,596 yards. Your thoughts?
Just a workhorse on the ground. Once again, Charlton, we talk about one of those mid-majors colleges that don't get the notoriety
That's
on
right.
national television week in, week out. But when you look at what the productivity is of these running backs, Charlton, if he had been in a major conference school, he'd have been a top 5 NFL draft pick.
I definitely agree with that. I want to bring it to another player. Number 7, Cedric Benson out of Texas. What an amazing runner. 5,540 yards for the Longhorns. Big C, your thoughts?
That's a common theme down in Texas, Charlton, when you look at it. Just like at Wisconsin, you have these workhorse running backs. Cedric Benson, following Earl Campbell, following Ricky Williams.
Yep.
Winning the Heisman Trophy, being a number 1 draft pick of the Chicago Bears. His pro career did not turn out the way that his college career did, Charlton, but we're talking about college running backs and their productivity.
I want to give you my number 8 guy. A lot of people may not agree, but it's Damian Fletcher. He played at Southern Miss. He rushed for 5,302 yards, always in the backdrop of Alabama and other great programs down south. Big C.
Well, you think about Southern Mississippi and some of the great athletes that they've turned out. Brett Favre, Reggie Collier, who would be a number 1 overall draft pick today's NFL quarterback style of play. But, gaining that type of yards, Charlton, and not getting the notoriety on the college level, this is what television has done to so many great athletes.
Yeah, another one in the last few minutes, LT, LaDainian Tomlinson, TCU, 5,263 yards. Not the biggest guy, but boy, was he durable. Big C, your thoughts?
And even when he was at TCU, he didn't get all the notoriety. People were shocked that the Chargers took him with their number 1 draft pick when he came out of college. But he didn't let anybody down. He went on to lead the NFL in rushing a couple of years, Charlton,
Yep.
and also in touchdown production Friday, ending his career with the New York Jets, getting into Canton, Ohio's Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Herschel Walker, I put him as the next guy, number 10, out of Georgia, 5,259 yards, and he only played 3 years there. Big C, your thoughts?
And you look at that, you take Herschel Walker's numbers and compare them to anybody else. The number of yards that Herschel averaged 1,800 yards a year.
Yep.
So if he was able to have played his senior season and not go to the USFL, but also he was a Heisman Trophy winner, Charlton, them to a national championship also.
That's right.
So he was an iconic figure. Not only that, he facilitated the largest single-player trade in NFL history, 1-for-11, the Dallas Cowboys and the Minnesota Vikings, Shelton.
The last player I'll give the number 12 ranking to, and maybe way too low, Archie Griffin, Ohio State, played for the great Woody Hayes, two-time Heisman Trophy winner, 5,177 yards, and could have had more. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, he was the first true freshman running back to lead the Big Ten in rushing when he started as a freshman for the late Woody Hayes at Ohio State. But he set the table for what was to become a great running backs on the major college level, Charlton. He was a dominant force, and when he started out, he was that diminutive back. He was not a huge man. He was only 5'10", but he was a horse, Charlton. He played behind a great offensive lineman. He had John Hicks at left tackle, Charlton, who was an All-American at that time. Cornelius Green, an African-American quarterback. But Archie Griffin delivered, and he went on to be a #1 draft pick of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, everybody has their own opinion, but there's just some guys that I think, and of course, everybody can judge how they want to. I want to say what I love doing Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports. Actually, we're on the #1 network in the United States of America for podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow us on YouTube. If you have a television set, and a lot of people are turning away TVs and getting the tablets now, but you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast. I really love the app called Alexa. You can say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C, and he'll do his thing, and I really thank our sponsors for all of their continued support. I want to close out tonight's Big C Sports Podcast with Major League Baseball schedule. You have the Colorado Rockies at Washington. St. Louis is at Pittsburgh. Cleveland is at Toronto. Boston is at Tampa Bay. Philadelphia is at Detroit. You have San Diego at New York. Kansas City's at Atlanta. And Atlanta's up and down, but they're still chasing the Dodgers. Do you think they have enough to carry out and chase them down to the finish line, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you got that youth in Atlanta, just like you have the youth in L.A., I don't think that the summer months will wear down either one of those teams. I look for Atlanta to dominate the East and face the Dodgers for the National League pennant.
Cincinnati at Milwaukee. You have Miami at the Chicago White Sox. The Oakland A's at Houston. What a tough place to win. The New York Yankees at the Minnesota Twins. Baltimore Orioles at Arizona. Chicago Cubs at San Francisco, and the Giants are streaking. You have the Los Angeles Angels at the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's the Battle of L.A., Texas at Seattle. Big C, the Battle of L.A., I remember when you had the Rams and the Raiders down there in the Coliseum. That was called the Battle of L.A. Also, when the Rams played down in Anaheim and you had the Raiders in Los Angeles, still the Battle of L.A. You know, Clippers and Lakers, that's Battle of L.A. This Angels and Dodgers rivalry is probably the least significant battle because the Angels haven't won anything outside of beating San Francisco that one time in the World Series, but they're never going to be LA's team. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they have a more recent World Series victory than the Dodgers do, so they have more recent history, you know, in the logs of professional baseball. I mean, the Dodgers have always been the name
Always.
in that town.
Yeah.
But, you know, anybody can have a bright afternoon, and that's when it comes down to performance on the diamond. Marketing has always been big in sports, but if you can win the battle of the city and you can have the best winning record between those interleague games, Charlton, that's what you look for.
Last thing I want to ask you as we close out today on Big C Sports, the NBA is opening up an investigation on tampering by owners. The question is, how do you police yourself when you're telling billionaires what to do with his money? You're not going to get good results. Big C, your thoughts?
Okay, you said the NBA is opening an investigation.
Yep.
That would come from the commissioner's office, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Who employs the commissioner?
The billionaires. Billionaires Boy Club. Yep.
So you're going to be investigating yourself. I mean, it's nice to make that statement from a media perspective that, you know, these owners are making these deals, you know, hours after free agency has started, all these players are signed.
Right.
They've had communications with them. I mean, if you're going to buy a car, you at least want to go test drive it, okay?
Allegedly, yes.
NBA owners weren't even test driving the players. They were just signing them sight unseen. Okay?
Yeah. Yep.
You know, let the buyer beware. That's what they were looking at. Look at Kevin Durant. He got signed. He wasn't even going to play.
Right.
So we know that there's collusion in the NBA. We know that there's tampering in the NBA.
Yeah.
Whether you you're doing about yourself, okay?
Yep.
It's not going to happen. That's like telling the police force, turn in all your bad cops.
Yeah, and we know that doesn't happen. They've tried it just doesn't happen. I want to say we love sports, and it's just a matter of Googling everything that comes up so you can stay informed. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, 1 year from today, one of the greatest epic events in all the world of sports. The 2020 Summer Olympics will kick off in Tokyo, Japan. We have an opportunity to see some of the greatest athletes in the world, over 5,000 of them gathered in one place.
Yeah.
We also have an opportunity to witness history. We have Simone Biles, the most decorated female gymnast, the U.S. gymnast of all time, have an opportunity to become the world's most decorated female gymnast as an African American. Looking forward to a year from the day in Tokyo, Japan.
And we'll all look forward to it, and you can too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.